Namaste Galactic family, welcome back to my channel IndigoAngel. Welcome if you're new. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and if you're returning, don't forget to hit the notifications bell to continue to receive my messages. And if you like the content on my channel, please share and comment on these videos so others can find out about my work. So today we are going to do a Anunnaki or Anunnaki, there's a couple different pronunciations of the word, Anunnaki Starseed origin reading. This is the majority of the human collective race. This is a December reading approaching the golden gate of the ecliptic winter solstice or summer solstice for those of you who are doing indigenous ceremony or who are tuning in to Uluru, Australia, one of the major Mother Ark gate sites on the planet. This would be hosted by the Pleiadians, Assyrians, Arcturians, and this is bringing forth a lot of Lemurian activations. So a lot of the old equatorial encoding is infusing the grid, along with the stretching of the frequency to the 6D hosts, the Syrian portals, and this is happening December 21st, 2020. So we're going to have major grid site and Stargate activations all over the world from this, particularly from the Stargate signets of Pleiades, which is in Machu Picchu, also the Arcturians signet gate site, which is Lake Titicaca. So a lot's happening on the southern hemisphere as this healing energy is coming from the south and rising up into the north. Okay, so we're actually going to have a lot going on in France as well. And I'm also going to be bringing a guest on the channel coming up. I'm going to have him on the channel December 21st, 2020. And this is going to be, his name is Dan Shaw, and he actually wrote a book covering all of the vortexes running through France at this time. So I'm really excited to have him on the show. I will be interviewing him with Jean-Claude at Beyond Mystic. And we're going to kind of dive into the vortexes of France, as I feel this will be somewhat of a focal point for a lot of this stretching of that frequency, stretching of that Syrian hosted six-dimensional energy that is going to be expanding into the pentagrams and into the shifting geomancy that lies dormant in the France landmass encoding. Okay, so I just kind of wanted to briefly cover that. I'm really excited to have the guest on, but essentially my readings are timeless. So you'll see if you scroll back through some of my playlists, I do have like a monthly account for some of my readings, but I really like to feel that the readings themselves are timeless in the sense that if you are listening to this reading now and you resonate, then you have just simply merged back into the time waves of the reality fields of relativity, and that the messages today are meant for you. Okay, so thank you for joining me today. And Anunnaki Starseeds are mostly hybridized soul genetic lines or interbred radial species using human genetic engineering with Syrian, Pleiadian, Draconian, also the four royal stars, so Aldebaran, Antares, Fomalhaut, and Regulus, and also some original Niburians who are still here. According to Sitchin, most of these Niburians have left, but I have actually met some beings myself who consider themselves to be original Niburians, so I don't want to leave that out. But essentially what I have come to see psychically is that the original Niburians tend to really have somewhat of a blue skin, and this is because they are used to very cold cryo-like states from the mothership, and also where they like to frequently visit, which is their more visited bases and bunkers, which are in Antarctica themselves, and they do prefer to be underground. There are about 48 underground Niburian bases and bunkers that are all over the world, essentially. And so they do tend, their color of their skin tends to be more blue because of this more cold adaptivity that they've come to adapt to. So please see my Cosmic Grid Update, the 4-Quadrant Hybridization Society, where I explain the detailed connection to the Anunnaki, the Anunnaki, and the 4 royal stars, and the planetary overlay Atlantean Aryan systems that are defined by this 4-quadrant system globally. I really dive in here in this video to the connections to the 4 royal stars and the Anunnaki, and how this is one of the ways in which they have assisted colonizing the world. And so I really recommend watching that. The link to this the video will be in the description. And there is a high classification of diversity here with this, here within these hybridizations. And I just want to say this because not every nation from these lineages are Anunnaki. But a large majority is, in fact, okay? But an example of this is, like, let's say Aldebaran. Aldebaran is mostly Nordic, Germanic, Scandinavian. This also ties heavily into Hitler and the Nazis, because I don't want to say the other pronunciation of that. So that was an encoded linguistic expression of that, the Nazis. So some of you can decode that right now, because Hitler was channeling technologies from Aldebaran, UFO technologies, and the Nazi Bell time machine supposedly came from Aldebaran. So like I said, not all descendants of Aldebaran are Anunnaki, but about half of these beings from Aldebaran are hybridized with the Anunnaki. And I meant to include this in my last Aldebaran Starseed origin reading for information for the Archangel Michael family, but I just didn't get a chance to put it in there. But it was kind of in the back of my mind, one of those things where I was kind of searching for it, and then I was like, darn it, where did that piece of information go? So it didn't quite make the cut, but I had been wanting to say that. So these Anunnaki hybrids and these descendants do make up for the majority of the human race beings. These are the primary descendants of the 4 Abrahamic religions. So this is where this gets very, very, very deep. Okay? And this is where this history ultimately comes from. And so that's why it's very, very important at this time to really dive into this, as a lot of this is really coming up for everyone to fully understand, particularly as everyone transcends and has full 12-strand DNA activations, full 22-strand DNA activations, all the way up to the 48-strand DNA activations. This information is within those CDT plates, as they like to say in the Voyagers, which are already holographically residing within your own universal tree of life. Every single being on Earth has the capacity to access these plates and discs and read the history themselves from their own cellular memory and from their own light body field. So I say 4 because of the Anunnaki Stargate, okay? The Anunnaki Stargate, this is the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, which the Anunnaki Stargate is highly activated at this time as we bring through higher atonements of Christed frequency. This is all coming through the Golden Gate alignment. Even the silver cord, the silver feed line, the astral feed line from the center of the earth. This information is coming up the feed line for those that are ready to access this information. This is coming through Uluru and the Mother Arcs, the Pleiadian coalition running with Sirius and Arcturus at this time. It is highly activating that Anunnaki Stargate within the grids, aligning to the winter and the summer solstice. But the Anunnaki Stargate is a 4-house nation quadrant system. You have the Abrahamic sectors, which is primarily Christianity, Judaism, and Islamic. But there is also Armenian that they don't want you to know about, called the Armenian Quarter. They access their account through what is the Stargate of Zion, and which is one of the 8 gates in the old city of Jerusalem. And I do feel this has something to do also with the terrible Armenian genocide. So if you don't know about the Armenian genocide, you should look into this. You should read into this, because genocide runs very deep in the Anunnaki history, mythology, and cosmology. These are the intentional acts to destroy racial groups. And this behavioral pattern comes from the royal bloodlines of the Anunnaki. And if you are an Anunnaki starseed, please do not take this personal. Please, if you hold resistance to it by means, then there's something there that you're working through to try to deeper understand. Make sure you're not coming from a place of judgment. That definitely will help to observe the information, vet the information yourself. Please, I ask you to vet all of this information yourself, come up with your own conclusions. That is the best way to feel whether this is information that you do or do not seek to bring into your consciousness. But essentially, from my research, genocide really runs deep within the Anunnaki history, and it's those intentional acts to destroy racial groups. Whether it's coming specifically from the Anunnaki themselves, it is a behavioral pattern that is within the lineage. This also has to do with the Assyrian genocide, the Greek genocide. This is because the Anunnaki, have been the most dominant and aggressive galactic nation, claiming dominance over the earth. Their creator gods An and the beings that descended to the earth gave their cultural inheritance the technologies of record keeping, reading, writing, and recording. And this is why they have been so fundamental. This is why they have been so dominant, is because of particularly the intelligence of keeping record of their genealogy. Now, this is not something that the other lineages were guided to do. They kept the patriarchal genealogy of their family histories, and they gave this to their descendants. Okay, and this has given them a huge advantage over other nations. This is why their literature is what we use today. Their stories have been reinterpreted through Moses, through Abraham, as they all were hyped up on that white atomic gold from the Dead Sea. Okay, that was information handed down from them, from their Anunnaki forefathers, from the Sumerians. The later family lines descended from their kingship. Their tablets recorded the cradle of civilization. Okay, so how Anunnaki ties into the descendancy of Jerusalem is because Christ is king, the sun, the sun. These tribes descended from priests of the Anunnaki. This is all relative right now because Sirius, which is highly hybridized with Anunnaki, sun rises at this time and aligns to the three kings, the belt of Orion, and the new sun is born. And the sun will actually stand still 3 days prior to December 25th. There's actually some really good articles, websites, memes that shows this depiction and this cosmological alignment. Many of you are probably already very aware of this alignment. This is essentially a Christed activation of the 144,000, the birth of Christ, Sophia, waves and integration into the planet, also Bethlehem, resurrection of reality, relativity. This resurrects this frequency and ties us deeper into our galactic history for those who are ready to come into this wisdom. Abraham, the common patriarch of the Abrahamic religions, called the chain of prophets the covenant of the pieces. Okay, so I've been reading Zecharia Sitchin, and I know that some feel that it was altered or it was distorted with an agenda. So I am just going to quote a couple pieces here. According to Zecharia Sitchin, Abraham's lineage as a member of the ancient Sumerian priesthood is significant in understanding the Anunnaki, pyramid wars, how the biblical covenant actually came to exist, and the origins of religion. According to Sitchin, Terah, the son of Nahor, and the father of Abraham, was born in Ur of the Chaldees. Initially, Abraham was an Enlil oracle priest, chosen to be the chief priest of Enlil's new city base at Haran after kingship was granted to the city of Ur. It was from Abraham that the nation of Israel descended, and as Sitchin points out, Abraham is recorded as having left Ur for Haran in Genesis. So the problem here is we have not resolved our genesis as a human collective, our history as a species. Therefore, we kind of have to acknowledge here that Abraham was an Enlil oracle priest. Okay, he was chosen by the Sumerians, by the Anunnaki. Now, it's probably not very clear whether he was Anunnaki true bloodline or not, but this does leave this open for that speculation. It does leave this open for that theory that at least whatever he brought forth was through the agenda of the Anunnaki. Okay, it's really hard to understand our human trajectory if 95% of the world does not even understand their genesis, if they do not even understand the process of their biogenesis, okay? And because of that, the term Anunnaki or Anunnaki has become such a generic term over the recent galactic earthly years. Many light workers and supposed galactic representatives speak of the Anunnaki very, very loosely. And usually it's because they actually have no in-depth insight at all to what it really means. So they're still swimming in the light pools of the 6 universal nations, and that's fine, but it's somewhat of false light work. It's somewhat of false illusion, and it is the netting or the hooks of false galactic cosmic systems that, in fact, create time capsules and actually hold people's consciousness in these time capsules. Now, they can't hold them forever, but they create reality platforms that do not allow them to see anything different, deep, or beyond that. And so these time capsules, these agendas hold people for years and years and years with their consciousness ever being able to transcend these perception boxes, okay? They're unable to fully interpret their history due to Templar quests, caps, and seals, and these were actual seals that were placed planetarily in the landmass in the North and South America, running on the 70-degree west vertical ley line. I actually have a map of this. I don't know if I'll pull it up for this reading or not. But this is why we have the J seal removal in the first place, okay? This is to remove the Templar seals, to be able to see beyond these limitations without judgment, okay? This is the hardest thing, without judgment, because demonization has been placed upon sectors of the Anunnaki. One sector is called the Jehovian Anunnaki, as they are the ones deemed responsible for the fall of Atlantis, for the Luciferian rebellion, and several other events in history. So it's somewhat difficult for me, not that I don't transcend this, because nothing ever ultimately holds me in any type of anger or frustration. I just keep working through it. I just keep seeing through it. I stay in my own lane. But I see many of these beings regurgitating starseed novelty. They're basically just making like slushies from the tip of the galactic iceberg without any clue what's underneath the water, okay? And it's because a lot of people are actually afraid to really dive into this. Many just also don't hold the Akashic capacity yet necessary to hold the frequency to understand these things without judgment, okay? And this information in particular across the globe, within the higher consciousness communities, even within the communities that have studied Gerald Clark and Zachariah Sitchin, and I'm not sure which others have studied it. It literally would require you to learn how to interpret the cuneiform clay tablets yourself to actually get the truest account of things and really understand this. But the reason why people hold so much resistance to this is really because of millennia of Templar programming. Okay? And Templar programming runs very, very, very deep. Even when you think you have cleared it at a higher consciousness level, it rehooks back into you because it's running through the programming of everyone else around you. That's why I say J seal removal is not a one-time thing, because you fall unconscious for 5 minutes and you can be plugged back in to these Templar seals, these Templar programming. And if you hold resistance to this now, it could be due to having Templar seals that are still in place. Okay, and I will be honest, I have avoided this myself for some time because of the cosmic webs that I was trying to fish through, the netting, the holographic pleomorphic viruses that were inserted into my mind. This is happening via your social media as well. Okay, so everything that you allow into your mind, you're giving consent for, consciously or unconsciously, whether you know it or not. And it inserts into your mind, and it takes time to decode the false matrices because they essentially bond to the genetic and natural and organic encoding. And even though they are false, they still insert like a natural thread. So it can take years to eradicate these galactic viruses and really get to the depth of things, really get to the truth of these things. So Anunnaki, it's termed beings from space. And this is a generic term, and it's kind of been labeled as a one-stop shop term for all extraterrestrial races that have visited or contacted the Earth, which is not true. Okay, so you'll see so many people throwing the term Anunnaki around very loosely. It's not true. They are hybridized with many galactic nations, the ones that I listed above, and they are descended through the Abrahamic religions. And this is most of the world. That's why I say this is the human collective race. Anunnaki Starseeds are considered to be those of royal blood, as they are the descendants of the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Assyrians, and the Babylonians, and that are the descendants of the Niburians. Many Anunnaki Starseeds also may feel that they are in a cryogenic-like state on Nibiru, and that they are directing a spiritual vehicle down here on Earth, and that their true form is functioning from a cryogenic machine, immersed in a liquid helium at low freezing temperatures, navigating an avatar down here on Earth from the mothership. Many Anunnaki Starseeds are connected to the underground bunkers spread across the Earth and also in Antarctica. Many Anunnaki Starseeds are called to the Jehovian Anunnaki grid that forms a giant dove across the United States and operates from multiple control systems. A picture of this giant dove grid, this is in the Keys of Enoch. I do believe there's a picture of it in there. They also operate under the 4-quadrant hybridization system, being one of them through the Lion grid, but also through the one that is operating off the 70-degree west leyline that runs vertically through North and South America, where the planetary J seals were implemented, like I mentioned before. So they are operating off multiple grid systems globally. internationally. So there's multiple ways that they have established themselves here as the collective human race colonizers. Many Anunnaki starseeds are most heavily burdened with ancestral slavery contracts with much difficulty to transcend these in these lifetimes. So if you are an Anunnaki starseed, you feel like transcending slavery contracts is one of the biggest hurdles in your life. And that can simply just mean from breaking ancestral contracts away from karmic debt. That can simply mean trying to get out of the slavery system, trying to get out of a 9-to-5 and get into a soul aligned destiny path that aligns your spirituality to your finances. Okay, that's where the slavery contracts come in. Also, slavery contracts come in through civil slavery unrest. It is probably one of the biggest hurdles that we face in almost every nation is a form of slavery contracts. This is coming from the Anunnaki descendants, okay? Slavery is in the behavioral patterns, racial injustice, racial identification. This is something that comes down through Anunnaki consciousness, okay? Because it's the process of wanting to dominate or be superior over another race lineage. And so this is maybe one of the biggest hurdles in an Anunnaki starseed's life, is to overcome slavery and racism. Anunnaki starseeds are the highest level of alchemists on the planet in comparison to other types of starseeds. So they are deeply called to work with metals, particularly gold. And if you want to join me on my Patreon, patreon.com/IndigoAngel, I am creating a gold series to start beginning to remove slavery contracts, working with and attuning through visualization to the frequency of gold. Now, this is very, very important to an Anunnaki starseed, working with the first level of their light body, working with the universal tree of life as their foundation and attunements with the frequency of gold. This is very, very important and is the basis for an Anunnaki starseed to be able to overcome slavery contracts in their bloodline, ancestrally, and within the Templar programming, all of it. Anunnaki starseeds also may feel confused on Earth in this life, as they feel inundated with misunderstanding about their heritage, false information, misinformation, and highly controversial and contradictory information within their lineage, making them feel extremely guilty or responsible for the deception of the ages. So much is being revealed right now on Earth to awaken the human species, and the Anunnaki starseeds must fully awaken to their own truths, as this may be the Starseed Collective, the only Starseed Collective within their hybridization, Sirian, Pleiadian, Draconian, the four royal stars, that can actually save humanity, as they have the deepest connections to the oldest generations of gods, the most powerful pantheon of deities on Earth. They have the ability to access this, okay? I have some little doggies barking downstairs, so pardon me. Now, this C-viral holographic genocide, Eugenics, this is also an agenda that is brought forth by the beings that are holding the highest Anunnaki DNA, okay? This is the purebloods, the ones that slept with, the ones that basically really believed in I'm sorry, what's the word? They believed in incest, being incest. Okay, so the purest bloods that of Anunnaki DNA today are the most incest bloodlines, but these are the ones that are most connected to the genocide and the eugenics of the darker agendas of the Anunnaki. Okay, the highest count of this in their bloodline, because they were most likely the descendants of Enki. Like, Enki slept with his wife, he slept with his daughter, he slept with his granddaughter. He had children with all of the women from his same family lineage, and the ancestry that came from that, okay? These are the purest bloods, the purest descendants today that are holding that ancestry. And that is why they feel such a calling to the eugenics agendas, the master slave programs. All of this runs deep within the ancestry of the Anunnaki. So it's not all of the Anunnaki hybrids that are running these programs. And so that's why I say it's up to the Anunnaki Starseed to take a stand, to say no, say we have minds, we have consciousness, this is our time here on Earth. And this is very difficult for the Anunnaki Starseed, as these aspects in the bloodline are fighting these wars within their own DNA, okay? The lesser counts of the Anunnaki, the ones that are most hybridized with the other starseed nations, these are the ones that are working very, very hard and very due diligently with the Lyrans, the ones from Armentania. These are the ones repairing these damages. These are the ones that are repairing the DNA, the portal to the other genetics, repairing genetic damage. Repairing the viruses that have defined humanity. They're helping to heal the walls in times, the rip in times, the ring of fire. They are the ones that are in the deepest level of cellular repair. So the Anunnaki, there are portions of the Anunnaki that are working deeply with the Lyrans to edit the genetic material and to do the most work in these hypermutations, monitoring the change of the genetic information that's being passed to the next generation. These are the ones that are on the higher level of supporting the genetic diversity and the rapid species evolution, the higher mutations, okay? And so there are many beings that are working to repair these aspects of the DNA. And so a lot of that's all playing out. Like I said, these are wars within one's own bloodline. And this is why we are torn in so many different directions as a multidimensional being, is because you're accessing the grail memory, the ancestral memory to the original Anunnaki. Okay. Okay, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into a starseed origin reading for the Anunnaki Starseed.